All right, what's up, guys? It's Mr. Enchanted here. It's been a while since I've made a video, but I just got back from winning one of these, the Store Set Champs Promo Enchanted Scar card. And along with that, we actually managed to ship the tournament, and we got the championship playmat, I believe that's what it's called, again, of the Scar. So I quickly wanted to just sort of make a recap video while the tournament was still fresh in my mind and sort of talk about my strategy going into the Store Set Championship and how I came to, or how I landed on the deck that I played today. So the first thing that I wanted to quickly talk about was how throughout this Azurite Sea set and meta, the green steel deck that I normally play has kind of been struggling. It's no longer a top tier 1 deck. It's sort of been shuffled down to the bottom of tier 1, maybe some would say at the top of tier 2, and the meta has got a lot faster. So originally, let me just show you the deck that I first started with. So throughout the Azurite Sea, this is the deck that I've kind of been landed on. I was on the Merfolk line, which is something that I am a huge fan of, and I was playing this in the Seattle DLC, when most people traditionally played the more Morph, Beast, Tinkerbell line. I always enjoyed Merfolk. I thought that it's such a good card. It applies a lot of pressure, and it can basically sing a sudden chill for you for free if someone attacks it. And so I had mixed results with this list. I've made various changes and tweaks to it. I was experimenting a lot with the Calhoun and Pluto, and I had a Lucifer in there for some extra discard. But one thing that was incredibly interesting was that over the past weekend, there was the NA Continentals, and I was fortunate enough to go. I played in the LCQ, and I scrubbed out in round 1 using a deck similar to this, and I lost to Red-Blue. Now, the reason this is important is because I ran into Xan Syed, and he beat one of our guys from the Toronto area in the, I guess you can say, the day 2, the top cut. He beat one of our guys who was running Blurple, and fortunately enough, Xan was like having lunch, and I managed to like kind of run into him, and he had just won, and I sort of approached him. And I kind of, quickly congratulated him and just let him know, hey man, we were preparing for you last night, all the best, hope you do well in the tournament. And then I just quickly wanted to pick his brain on a few points when it comes to the green steel archetype, because he's pretty much the consensus best player in the world, and he plays green steel, which is the 2 colors that I main in Lorcana. And we had a very short conversation, but the gist of it was that he kind of hinted at thinking about the Merfolk line instead of just the Diablo line. And for those that didn't know, this was the list that Xan ran in the Continentals. Now, this list seems really crazy, as 1/3 of the deck are uninkables. You have the Merfolks, you have the Calhouns, the Johns, the Diablos, the Storms, like even the Docs are in there too. And this seems like an incredibly chaotic and brick-heavy deck, in my opinion. But however, the reason why I'm bringing this story up is that just by this short, brief conversation we had, he sort of got me to think more about this whole cursed Merfolk line as a way that I traditionally played it in the past. If I bring up the previous deck that I was sort of on, the No Beast discard 1. So originally I'd run 4 Merfolk and 4 Smee. And when I'd face a deck, like the Sapphire decks, like Ruby Sapphire, for example, the general thought is that you just want to get under them. So by running 4 Merfolks, 4 Mr. Smees, turning them sideways, and just YOLO questing for 2, you can kind of get under the ramp and hopefully finish out the game before they get into the B-Preps, the Tamatoas, etc. But I sort of thought that there was something more to this line. And so eventually what I did was I sort of took the deck that I landed on and looked at Xan's list a little more, and eventually this was the list that I played today. Now, it looks almost identical to Xan's. The only difference is that instead of 2 docks, I ran an extra Hidden Cove. Now, I feel like the power of the Hidden Cove is just incredible, especially if you get it off on turn 2. Everyone knows this. You know, you shift Diablo, get it to the Cove, and you're safe from Brawl and Storm, etc. And the 20 uninkable count is harsh. It's incredibly harsh. So if you are someone who is going to play Green Steel and you want to use this new aggro discard variant that Xan is popularizing right now, know that this deck is very, very unforgiving. All it takes is a couple mistakes and you can easily throw the game. And so this deck is very frustrating at times, as there are some games where I wasn't able to ink on turn 2, which seems crazy, but stuff like that does happen. As you're running, 1/3 of your deck is uninkables. So in my list, I kind of went down by 1. I felt that, the docks weren't as necessary, but I would like to have 1 just in case if I can get it out and then bounce it with the muses, etc. So I ran 41 inkable and 19 uninkable cards. Now, the main or key point of this deck, again, going back to the Xan story, was thinking about the Merfolk line. And in the past, I mentioned I would try to get under the Sapphire decks by putting Merfolk out on 1, putting Smee out on 2, and then just kind of YOLO questing. Or if you happen to just mulligan heavy for the Merfolks and open 1 Merfolk and then open 2 more Merfolks and just like YOLO quest from there, that could work too. But what Xan was sort of talking about, he was hinting at this Curse Merfolk Calhoun Prince John line. And the idea is that you play Merfolk on 1, you don't quest it on 2, you play out the Calhoun, and then you quest the Merfolk on 3 after you play the Prince John. Now this puts your opponent in a predicament because they're stuck with two decisions. Now if they leave the Curse Merfolk up, then you're just going to keep questing for 2, and it's going to be way too fast, and you're going to get under them. The other issue is you don't want to waste a spell like Brawl on a Curse Merfolk. Like, that's pretty terrible. But secondly, if you do attack the Curse Merfolk because you want to get off the board, not only does it facilitate the draw engine from Prince John, but now they have an exerted character that Calhoun can swing into and hopefully clear, which gets you again that 2 lore. So it puts your opponents in these very peculiar situations. And this is more prevalent when you are on the draw. And so when you're on the play, obviously, if you're playing Green Steel, you mulligan for the Diablo shift line. You open Diablo 1, shift Diablo on 2, Storm, or put them in the Cove, etc. We all know this. This is not that hard. But the biggest problem with Emerald Steel in this set, and this is what I find, is that when the Diablo shift line doesn't work or you don't get it, what are you going to do? Like, what is your plan? Because in the past, we would go Morph 2 and shift into a Beast on 3. But it seems like Morph into Beast sometimes is a bit too slow because everything now is so fast, especially when it comes to the Steel Song decks. They're no longer just Steel Song. They have like aggro daisies and happies and docks and the mines and all this stuff. And there's also the green-purple decks that are running rampant everywhere. So again, the meta has sped up. The meta is a lot more faster. It's a lot more aggressive. So as Green Steel players, we need to adapt. And so another key point in this deck is including the 1 copy of the Go-Go Tamago. Now, this is a card that used to catch people off guard. I feel like a lot more players are more aware of its presence, especially when they're playing an Emerald deck. But it does give you this ability to get that extra reach after all of your 2 questers has died. So when you're facing Ruby Sapphire, for example, which is the most popular deck, as you can see in the NA Continentals, it was like over 30% of the field. But usually Ruby Amethyst, Ruby Amethyst too. Ruby Amethyst, Ruby Sapphire, eventually they're going to get to their big Sisu or they're going to get to their Be Prepared. And the question is, have you gained enough lore up until that point for where your reach will take you over the edge till 20? And so some decks have Goat Bounce Goat, for example, or the White Rose, and Emerald decks, we have the Go-Go. And so instead of running for Merfolks, we did run 3 Merfolks and 1 Go-Go. And again, that's for that little extra reach. But the other thing that I really noticed about this deck is that your finisher, believe it or not, for me was Mr. Smee. Now, Mr. Smee wasn't a card that I played too much on turn 2. On turn 2, I was usually putting down Calhoun, Ursula Deceiver, or I was putting down the Cove. Those are my main plays on turn 2. Rarely was I inking a card and playing Smee on 2. A lot of the times I would hold Smee until later, or maybe I'd get to a point where I'd be on 3 ink, I'd ink my 4th, and then I'd play double Smee. And Smee was sort of like this character that would end or close games for me. Now, of course, Smee is susceptible to things like Medusa, for example, but luckily for us and the rest of, I guess, the Lorcana community, Ed won the NA Continentals and has popularized this whole Tremaine craze, and so I saw a lot of Tremaines today. You know, Medusa is still there, of course, but Smee can easily get around that by just YOLO questing, right? And so I found that there are times where on 4 ink you'd play Muses, or just play 2 Smees if you can, and then that was your character that would get you over to 20 lore. And so going back to the tournament, I just kind of want to talk about the matchups I had and how I was able to win the Scar Championship playmat. And so round 1, I faced a Steel Song opponent that I've never played before. I believe, I can't remember who won the die roll, but he was playing a sort of older Steel Song variant that had the flutes. So I guess a little bit dated. I think I won the first game. The second game he opened Cindy 1 with a Storm, and that just like totally wrecked me. I think I opened Diablo 1. He took game 2, and then game 3 I was on the play, and I believe I opened Diablo, and it wasn't too hard taking it out from there. Game 2 I played against Ruby Sapphire. And this was I believe he's a store owner, or he runs the event at the store, or I'm not entirely sure, but a super cool guy. We were talking, we were playing a bit, and this was one of the games where the Merfolk line really shined, where when I was on the draw, I mulliganed specifically for the Merfolk Calhoun Prince John line. Instead of just keeping Diablo 1 and 3 and throwing the rest of my hand away, I mulliganed away the Diablo line and I kept the Merfolk line. And so by opening Merfolk on 1 and then Calhoun on 2, eventually he played Tipo. And it put him in this very peculiar situation where, okay, his Tipo can take out the Merfolk, but then that leaves the Tipo, it's susceptible to the Calhoun, which will still get 2. And so I guess he kind of didn't want to deal with the Merfolk type of thing. But then the Prince John came down. And so now again, the Merfolk is facilitating the Prince John. The Merfolk plus Prince John goes from a sudden chill. Now it becomes a hypnotize, basically. Where if you kill the Merfolk, they're discarding a card and you're drawing one. And so this is where this whole line really shined for me in this tournament, in the Ruby Sapphire matchup. And this caused like a massive headache for this guy. And eventually the same thing happened as well, where he got a Hiram out. And so now the Hiram obviously wants to quest, banish a popsicle, draw 2 cards. But you have this Merfolk just YOLO questing, gaining 2, 4, 6, 8 lore. And it becomes insurmountable at a point, and you have to deal with it. And so again, brawling it is obviously not a good answer. If you have little Sisu, sure, that's a lot better. But luckily for me, I didn't really see many little Sisus at all. So that was game 2. Oh no, that was round 2. In round 3, we faced the Mirror. We faced a green steel Mirror against my buddy Irvin, who's someone I respect, really good player. And this was sort of a matchup where I kind of got pretty lucky. I got all the Petes in the world. I had all the Diablo shifts. And so, as you know, in the green steel Mirror, if you're able to shift out your Diablo, play a Pete, and then your opponent can't storm or strength your Diablo, and the next turn now I can storm and strength his. So it's kind of one of those situations. And my one of Doc, I think I top top decked in one of the games, which was able to draw me 2 cards. So that round was pretty lucky for me. Round 4, we played my buddy Josh. I think it was Ruby Sapphire. No, Ruby Amethyst, right? Ruby Amethyst. And this was a match where I won the die roll, and it was basically whoever went first kind of dominated. Again, this is one thing that kind of sucks about Lorcana, right? The player that's going first has such a massive advantage, especially when you just open the nuts, like I was kind of doing whenever I went first, like opening the Diablo shift line. And so that matchup, the whole Merfolk Calhoun idea, it didn't really apply. And so Diablo kind of just carried us through that one. And then round 5, we were 4-0. So we were the top seed. And so we just drew with another guy who was 301, I think he was 301. Yeah, so then we just drew, so we would both make a top cut. And so after that, I took a little break, got some snacks, drank a bunch of water. Again, this is something that's incredibly important if you are someone who is very serious about trying to win a store set championships. Bring snacks, bring food, bring something healthy if you can. I think I went to a store and I bought some type of like kiwi, apple, like some type of green juice, something very light. I didn't want to go and eat like hamburgers and French fries or something crazy like that and feel all sluggish. Like you want to have some healthy snacks on you, if possible. So I did that in between the 5th round and the top cut. And so in the quarterfinals, we played Mike, a local guy that I play against a lot, and he had Purple Steel, which was a deck that caused me all kinds of headaches. Now, Purple Steel is kind of weird because you can build it in a lot of different ways. You can go the library route, you can go the Tinkerbell shift line, you can go genies, you can go rabbits, you can go the 1-drop Maleficent. Like there's a lot of things you can do in Amethyst Steel. And he was on a very interesting list. I think I saw Zeus, I saw Grab Your Swords. We had a couple interesting tech cards. There was like a purple Hades in there as well. So this game was really tough for me. And I was on the play in game 1 and I lost. And so I had to win game 2 and 3 just to stay alive. Luckily enough for me, game 2, I was on the play. This game, I opened a lot better than I did in game 1. And also the knowledge from game 1 really helped me. And one thing that I did in this round was I was getting destroyed game 1, but I tried to extend it out as long as I could. And the reason why you want to do this is because you want to get as much information as possible on your opponent's deck. So even if you're getting crushed and there's no hope, there's like 0% chance that you're going to win, and you might survive, maybe 1 or 2 more turns, then do it. Because then your opponent might play a couple extra cards in the next 2 turns that now you're going to see and you'll be able to prepare for in round 2. And so I saw like a Wreck-It Ralph, I think it was a 6-drop Wreck-It Ralph steel card that destroys, I think it's like an item. Is it an item or a location, and it gains you lore? It's a new card. So I saw that tech card, I saw the Hades, so I was like, wow, that's interesting. So there's a couple like super bricks in his deck that weren't applicable to our matchup. So that was some valuable information that I took with me onto game 2. And again, game 2, we mulliganed, I believe, for the Diablo line. I believe we got the shift line, and we opened a lot better, and we took that game. And so now game 3, we're on the draw. And so this is where you don't want to panic, especially as a green steel player. As in the past, it almost felt like all or nothing on Diablo. But you have to devise a plan. Like, what are you going to do if you don't get the Diablo shift? What are your lines of play? Like, what if you don't get Diablo 1? We no longer have Morph to try to shift Diablo on 2. We don't have Beast anymore to shift Beast on 3. And so this is where the whole Merfolk, Calhoun, Prince John line was massive for me. So that game, I stuck with my guns and threw the Diablos away and kind of went for the Merfolk Calhoun line. Because not only is it good against the Sapphire decks, but against purple or Amethyst Steel for example, right? They have the brooms, they have Smee, they have snakes, they have the Mim package. Those are all characters that can get destroyed by Calhoun. But we do have the hidden cove, and you can put Calhoun in the cove to make it a 4-3. So that was something that also came up in this game, was buffing up this super-sized Calhoun. But again, we just stuck to our guns. We found the Merfolk line. We opened Merfolk on 1. On 2, I believe we played Calhoun, but most importantly, did not quest the Merfolk, because that's something that, again, you just don't want your Merfolk to die right away. You want to give yourself the chance to play the Prince John on 3 if possible, because now it's going to facilitate your draw engine. And luckily for us, we did that because Mike, the guy we were playing, he was on the library and he put the Broom, Diablo, and Chernobog all in the library. And I was like, oh my gosh, because now you banish a Diablo in the library, it's drawing 2 cards, right? And so he was getting massive card advantage by the library. And for anyone that knows who plays Green Steel, if you're not on Cricky, you struggle mightily with clearing locations. So this was tough for me. Like, I got to hit the library for 2 with Ursula, Deceiver of All, and hit it for 2 with Diablo, and hit it for 3 with Calhoun. Like, that doesn't even kill it, right? It still has 1 health left. So that was tough. But luckily for us, the Prince John draw engine was able to draw us enough cards where we could dig deep into our sudden chills and our hypnotizes, and we were able to discard the Amethyst Steel player's hand and take the win in the first round. So after that, in the semifinals, we had a rematch with our boy Irvin, and we had the Green Steel mirror, and we opened, I think there was one game, we took a picture of the board where our discard pile and our board were identical. We both had Merfolks, we both had Calhouns. It was craziness, and this was really close. And again, I got pretty fortunate with my top decks in this game. Irvin was joking that I run 8 Petes in my deck, which was pretty hysterical because it seemed like I just always had a Pete every time that he had a Storm or a Strength of a Raging Fire. And I remember there was one game he had a Muses on board and he was gonna blow up and bounce my board, but I believe I drew into a Pete, which delayed that, and then I drew into a Hypnotize after. So the Pete locked out him playing the song, and then I top decked the Hypnotize to discard the song. So again, pretty fortunate and lucky for me there. We were able to go 2-0 and advance to the finals. And then in the finals, sure enough, we faced Ruby Sapphire. So again, red-blue, which was, I'm not sure how heavily played it was. I think I saw at least 4. And we had 25 people at our Store Set Champs. But again, I was teched for this matchup. I was prepared for this matchup. I knew my lines of play. And lucky enough for me, as a 1 seed, I was playing game 1 on the play. So game 1, I went for the obvious, go for the Diablo shift line. I believe I got Diablo 1. I don't think I got shift Diablo on 2, but we were able to draw into the majority of our discard engine, and I was able to cripple his hand rather quickly, and I think he got stuck on 6 ink. And so it was sort of in one of those situations where he needed to ink a card and draw a B prep off the top. I can't remember exactly how it finished, but the discard engine just went wild, and I was able to draw like a boatload of cards, and I was able to take down game 1. And then again, game 2, now on the draw, we again stuck to our guns, looking for that Curse Merfolk, right? This is something that the red-blue decks today were really struggling with because I hardly saw any little Sisus. So I'm not a Ruby Amethyst, I'm not a Ruby Sapphire player, and I'm not entirely sure on the reasoning for cutting the Sisus. Like, the little Sisu seems so good to me because you run Ice Block, you can take down all these small characters. You get rid of Daisy Duck, which is super annoying. And it's also, it facilitates the big Sisu, right? The shift line. But for whatever reason, I didn't, or maybe they weren't drawing them, and I was running into like hardly any little Sisus. So the only thing I had to worry about clearing my Merfolk was like a Tipo, Brawl, and like Hiram or Grammatala. And so I was in a really good position for the rest of this game because of the lines or the characters that I built in this deck, you know, from Xan. And we were able to pretty much do the same strategy. Look for the Prince John, get our discard cards out, and discard the red-blue player's hand down and just kind of YOLO quest to victory. And after that, we were lucky enough to win our scar right here. It looks pretty cool. And the championship playmat. So yeah, so hopefully you found this video interesting. Hopefully it helped you in some way. Again, probably the best piece of advice I can give to anyone that wants to take their store set championship seriously, try to win a playmat or in one of these scars. You know, a lot of it is pretty simple. You know, play the deck that you practice with the most, play the deck that you are the most comfortable with, get a good night's sleep, bring some snacks, and head in with a positive attitude. That's pretty much all you can do. And then just play your best and have fun, because at the end of the day, you know, that's what Lorcana is. It's a card game. It's fun, and that's what we're here to do. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. It's been a while since I made one, and hopefully I'll make more in the future. So Mr. Enchanted signing out, and I'll see you next time.